Hello, my name's Tim. Welcome to my channel. Am I going to tell you about what I read in December? Yes. Is this video quite late? Also, yes. So I planned to read quite a lot in December because I thought I'll have some time off work and with the Christmas break I'll be able to read quite a lot. I did have some time off work with the Christmas break, and I really didn't read very much. I read about half of what I was planning to read, so I've got a few hangovers into 2024. But I still read. I achieved one major reading goal in December, so I want to talk about that. First thing I finished was Flat Stanley. I read it with my son. It's like 90 pages. It's about a boy who a bulletin board falls on him and he becomes flat. And he goes through probably about 3 or 4 different adventures. And I found it very boring to read, but my son, my 6-year-old son, absolutely loved it. And so he immediately wanted to read the next one, which we've read, and now we're on the last one in this set of 3. So, yeah. Not for me, obviously, but he really liked it, and the art's quite nice. And it's, he posts himself to America, and he becomes a kite, and he helps stop art thieves by pretending to be a piece of art. There we go. The next thing I finished was Now We Are Six by A.A. Milne. This is a very short poetry collection with beautiful coloured artwork. I've done a review of that on the channel. And this is the last, I think, in the set that we've got of A.A. Milne Winnie the Pooh works. Beautiful and very easy to reread if possible. I'll probably read it to my kids. This was just for me. Another book, which was a kid's book that was just for me, was Easy-O Trot. Again, super short. Noticing a theme here. Yeah, it's the story of Mr. Hoppy, who is in love with Mrs. Silver, and her tortoise won't grow, so he pretends to do some magic. One thing that is quite nice is what happens is spoiler alert for Easy-O Trot, but he keeps swapping the turtles for bigger ones. So he goes to the pet shop and buy loads of tortoises, I should say, and keeps swapping them out. So some people are like, I've seen... First of all, there's a bit at the beginning saying, like, it was a lot easier to buy tortoises then, and now it's not, and you need to make sure you look after them, which is nice. And people say, oh, he gets with her on a complete falsehood, and she doesn't even end up with the tortoise anymore. But you do get a bit at the end on how the original tortoise is living his life. So I enjoyed that. I gave it 4 stars. The next thing I read was the final part in the Dark is Rising sequence by Susan Cooper, and that is Silver on the Tree. Leans much more into the kind of Arthurian legend. You have the Drew children and Will Stanton are both on adventures at the same time, and parts of the book follow each of them. I still find the Drews more interesting than Will Stanton, though he does go to like another realm that's falling apart to get a magic sword, and it felt very... Reading it, I felt very His Dark Materials, in this kind of strange world that's a bit like ours. It felt a bit like Sitagazi from The Subtle Knife. It felt a bit like that. But yeah, I gave that 4 stars. It's kind of 3 to 4. The whole series has been about 3 stars, but I've quite enjoyed... I enjoy the prose. The prose is really nice. But it's still hard to get your handle on what exactly is going on, because the magic is so soft and vague and unknowing, and sometimes I really like that, and sometimes I want a bit more something a bit more tactile that you can get your hands on. So, but I finished that series now, a series that was in my mum's house, in my house growing up, for years and years and years and years, and I never read it. And I read the first one a few years ago, and then my mum cleared out all her books, or loads of her books, so they weren't there anymore, so I found them all online to read. But I finished that series. The next is a book that is not very thin. Les Mis. I finished the last volume of Les Mis. I finished Les Mis in 2023. That was a big reading goal of mine. I read the final volume, Jean Valjean. They say it's only Look at this. The whole book is... This version is 1,200 plus pages. 1,264, something like that. The last section... The last volume is 250 pages, give or take. And you're like, oh, that's not that long. Look how small the text is. And it's just never ending. You know. So very difficult to read. Just lots and lots of words. I ended up reading most of this final volume on my Kindle. I got it on the Kindle because I can't carry this book around. I couldn't read it in bed holding it above my head because if I dropped it I would die. But it's still, I've got a review, I've got lots of thoughts about it on this book and how important it is and how I enjoyed reading some parts of it a lot and really, really didn't enjoy reading other parts a lot. Again, that was even in the final volume where Jean Valjean saves Marius from the barricades and then we just get 40 pages 40 pages on the history of sewers in Paris, and I'm like, this is the you know, this is the climax of the story. But anyway, this is a beautiful cover by Canterbury Classics, I think it is. Beautiful end pages, has a ribbon and beautiful gold line pages. But that's a big goal for me, was to read that book. So I'm pleased that I've done that. The next is a book that we read a chapter of every day to our kids in December, in time for Christmas, and that is The Christmasaurus by Tom Fletcher. This is a very nice edition with red painted edges. This is the story of a dinosaur egg goes to the North Pole, and with the North Pole's magic, it becomes the Christmasaurus, and there is a boy, William Trundle, who is in a wheelchair, and it's about his belief in Christmas and things like that. When we started it, I thought it was a little bit try-hard in the prose department. There was just so many little interludes and over-wordiness of overly descriptive, too many adjectives, too many adverbs, things like that. Other than his shiny red dino decorated wheelchair, he was just like every other kid now. You know, just, and lots of sentences like that, just a bit wordy. But I don't know if it's just I got used to it or if it just swept me up in the magic. But I stopped noticing it probably about a quarter of the way through, and just was brought into the story. There's a bit about bullying, which is quite hard to read. You don't really like reading about bullying to your kids. And the bully, Brenda Payne, is really not very nice. But then halfway through, you get the true villain of the story, someone called the Hunter. And the kids immediately didn't like him. He was a great villain, and there's real magic in it. And it was one of the best books we read. And there were a lot of twists and turns. It's quite a long book. You know, the text is quite big and there's nice drawings inside and things like that. But it's the longest book we've read to the kids. But they were still completely in it by the end, and we were drawn into it too. So that was a 5 stars from me because despite I don't know if the prose thing was just a me thing. My wife didn't notice it at all. She was like, "What are you talking about?" Ouch, that's my foot, screamed Brenda at the top of her squeakily perfect voice. She jumped backwards in pain, sending her tray of barely edible sludge flying up into the air. Things like that. But actually, I stopped noticing that. So, yeah, that was a 5-star read. And then a couple of things I read right at the end just to get those books in. I read this in an hour. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Raising the Theatre to New Heights. It's from a Trailblazer series. This is by Curtis Scaletta. This is just information. It's like a biography of Lin-Manuel Miranda, but it's written with lots of pictures and interesting anecdotes about him and his life. There's like little factoids about Puerto Rico and other things. And it's up until, I think Moana is about to come out at this point. And Vivo is in the works. So this is, up until, okay, here we go, 2021. The film version of In the Heights is due for release. So this probably came out 2021. he's a really interesting guy. He's very driven and productive. He's incredibly productive, and so he is very like Alexander Hamilton. And something I found interesting was he's Puerto Rican, but he lived in New York, and then he went to a very, very posh white school, and how you then as an adult he kind of got more into Puerto Rican culture than he was as a kid. Just thought that was quite interesting. And then the final thing I read was I started the series of Disney comic books. So I read this one, which is let me open it up. So these are all for the Disney 100. They made special covers. So this is What If Mickey and the Gang were the Avengers. Donald being Thor is a highlight. But this is actually Amazing Spider-Man number 17. So inside is a Spider-Man comic. This one, I will do a review of all of these, but because in this range there were lots of very, very different storylines all thrown together, so I'll do a review on that because that's both a good thing and a bad thing. But yeah, so I'll probably give that 4 stars, and that's my reading for December. So overall, December I read much less than I had done in almost any other month. Going back in time, the other time I read less than that was in April, when I was also reading a volume of Les Mis. I just think it's so wordy. It just slows you down, and that's okay. But in the total, I read about 1,300 pages, 7 or 8 books. But you could see a lot of them are very small. Like basically all of it was. That's like a medium-sized book. That's like over 300 pages. But the rest of them were all very small. That's just one story of that. Very small. Then you've got reasonable size, but still for a kid's book. And then, chonker. So, anyway. That's all that I read in December, and I think that's the end. I've still got a couple more videos about what I read in 2023. A couple of top 5 things. And then that'll be the end of my 2023 content. And then I'll start talking about what I'm reading in 2024. So, give this video a like. Please subscribe. And I'll see you soon. And get out of my house!